welcome to the Into Africa reserves, and these are the two paddocks either side of us. So we're going to do a 10-15 minute talk on the animals that live in this paddock. To our right, which are our eastern black rhinos, and the ones on our left hand side, which is our Into Africa reserve, that has our zebra, eland, and kafui flat lechwe, and in the summer months our giraffe go over there as well. So we'll start with the Into Africa reserve, and everything is nicely stood the other side of that now, right now, but you should have shot a glance at them as you were walking up Africa. Anyway, so I can see in the very distance, just through the gap there, is our herd of 7 kafui flat lechwe. So these come from Africa, and they come from the kafui flat plains out in Africa. They're the second most semi-aquatic antelope that you will find in the world. Second only to the Sitatunga. So they're very well adapted to being in and around water. So their feet are quite long to deal with woody areas, and they're often eating a lot of vegetation around the edge of the water. They can actually fully submerge themselves into the water, and their nostrils are very well placed on top of their nose, so they can actually fully submerge themselves from predators as well. And their nostrils being on the top of their nose acts as a snorkel. And they've got a really water repellent coat, which has done well with all the wet weather that we've had here recently as well. So we've got a herd of 7 out there. It's distinct, very obvious how to tell the difference between the males and the females. So the males have horns and the females do not. So we've got one male out there, and he's called Kruger. The females don't have names because it's very difficult to actually tell them apart from one another. So the females don't have names. So the other the other antelope that we have, and one's just come into view just over on the right hand side there, are our common eland. They're the second largest antelope that you will find in the world, second only to the giant eland. Unlike the lechwe that I was saying, the females do actually have horns. So the group that we have here, group of 4, all have horns, and we are able to tell the eland apart from one another because of the way their horns are shaped. So if you see one that has the horns pointing outwards like that, that is the leader of the pack, that's Gunther, the leading and dominant female of that group. So the other species we have in the paddock are zebra, and it's the grevy zebra that we have. So you actually find 3 species of zebra in total, and these are the most critically endangered, the grevy zebra. If you could see a lineup of the different species of zebra, it is easy to actually tell them apart. And the most common way to tell the grevy zebra apart from the plain zebra, which is the most common, those that you associate with the Lion King, living much larger herds, is the fact that the grevy zebra does not have stripes on its belly, but the other zebras do. The only exception to that is the mountain zebra, but they're not very often seen in captivity. There's only 4 collections within the UK that actually house the mountain zebra. But the way to tell them apart from the other species is they have a flappy bit of skin on their neck, which is actually called a dewlap, and that actually helps with thermoregulation. So there's lots of different theories as to why zebras are stripy. One is to do with thermoregulation, so controlling the body temperature. The other is to do with predator avoidance, so they can actually blend in or look a lot bigger as a herd when there is one. And the other is to do with actually flybys. They have shown with halters that if you put them in zebra striped coats, they actually have less fly stripes than what they do if they didn't have it. So the different areas where zebras live, they have different size stripe patterns. So some are much thinner, like the grevy zebra that we have, and others much chunkier stripe patterns. But again, it can do with the slight temperature differences within those areas as well. So if we move on to our rhino reserve that's just in front of me now, this is our eastern black rhino. So we actually house 3 here at the park. The one in the very front paddock is Najuma, our 6-year-old female. In the middle reserve is Makibo, and he's 8 years old now. And then we actually have a 32-year-old male who is in the very back reserve. And the best way to view Jasper, the 32-year-old, is actually round on Lion Country. You actually look down into his reserve. So Jasper is in here. This is his retirement home. He's actually sired 7 calves towards the stud book. So he's done a very good job. And we do have some very positive news actually. Our female Najuma is heavily pregnant as we speak. So fingers crossed all going well with her as we get the pitch platter of baby rhino feed. So Najuma and Nakido, sorry, finding this all, thank you. So Najuma is pregnant for 16 months and she's at the very latest stages of her pregnancy. And like I say, she gives birth to 1 offspring, so all being well, over the next month or so, we may have a baby rhino, so do keep an eye on our social media, and if you're popping down this way, you'll more likely hear about it on our social media anyway. So Nakido is the dad to the offspring that we're expecting, and the Eastern black rhino is actually a solitary species of rhino, hence why we keep them in separate reserves and not living in groups. So the most common rhino species that you see in zoos is white rhinos, and they live in groups called crashers, so much bigger, and they tend to be a lot less sensitive as well. These guys can be a little bit more sensitive to different kind of noises than the white rhinos, but they are in fact critically endangered, as are most all rhinos. But there's only about 6,000 left in the wild, and the reason for that is poaching for their horns. So unfortunately, it's quite a barbaric trade, but in some countries they do believe that the horn has medicinal properties, or despite science proving otherwise. It isn't all doom and gloom there. We are seeing a slight increase from the reports coming out this year, or towards the end of last year, that we are actually seeing a steady incline in rhino species out in the wild. And hopefully Yorkshire Wildlife Park will be able to contribute to that with the rhino park in the near future. The best time to see the rhinos is usually probably a little bit later in the day, around maybe 2 o'clock-ish. They're often in and out. They've got a nice toasty warm house. They're at 18 degrees and above, so they do pop in and out periodically, so you just sort of have to come back and have a look, but usually around 2:30-ish they're out and about in the reserves. I'm going to end my talk there, but I will hang around, so if anybody has any questions about any of the animals, just come over and ask. If not, enjoy the rest of your day at Yorkshire Wildlife Park.